I've dedicated myself to cataloging and rating every mystery box story. The mystery box story is a recent genre of fiction, and this is its basic definition. For a more in-depth explanation, check the title card. I've also outlined 10 criteria that I use to judge whether a particular mystery box story is an effective one. This episode, I'm covering the father of the mystery box as we know it, Twin Peaks. This is long overdue. You can't talk about serialized complex mystery TV and not mention Twin Peaks. It was a pioneer of the genre, and today, 30 years after it ended, the TV landscape is forever changed because of it. Before J.J. Abrams came around and gave this method of storytelling a name, this show was ingraining new ways to watch TV into American audiences. Twin Peaks came out at a time where the sitcom and the police procedural were the biggest genres on television. In a time before the internet, streaming, DVR, it was nearly impossible to keep up with long story arcs across multiple episodes. So most TV episodes were self-contained, and could be watched in any order, so that audiences could enjoy reruns without being confused. Not so with Twin Peaks. If you missed an episode, you would be totally lost. And even if you saw every episode, you'd probably still be lost, because hardly anything in the plot is ever explained. If this show has one defining trait, it's that it's incomprehensibly weird. But how does Twin Peaks hold up as the first real mystery box TV show? Today, we find out. And spoilers from this point forward. Twin Peaks premiered in 1990 and was created by Mark Frost and David Lynch. The basic premise is that in the town of Twin Peaks in the northwestern United States, a girl named Laura Palmer is murdered. Our main character is FBI agent Dale Cooper, who is sent to investigate. And here we have this show's huge and obvious opening mystery. This was the first thing that set it apart from other TV shows at the time. Usually, a murder investigation on TV only lasts for one episode, and then the killer gets caught and everybody moves on. Twin Peaks stretches Laura's murder over the first season and a half. It's the event that the whole plot of the show is built around. As the murder investigation is going, we get tons of little subplots. Some are mundane. We meet the people who live in Twin Peaks, like the police, the teens who knew Laura, local business owners, as well as the various outcasts and criminals. In this small town, everyone's life intersects, and there are always a bunch of conflicts between them going on at once. Also, there are like 8 love triangles. Sometimes the show dips into real soap opera territory. But this isn't really where the mysteries come from. The real draw of Twin Peaks for most viewers is the bizarre supernatural stuff. During their investigation, Agent Cooper and the rest of the town run into all kinds of weird, unexplained phenomena. Now, if you've never seen the show, you might be imagining something kind of like Stranger Things. That comparison kind of works, but only on a superficial level. Both shows are about a small town full of monsters, but the mysterious elements of Twin Peaks make way less sense. In no particular order, here are a few of them. There are these places called the White Lodge and the Black Lodge. They're places on another plane of existence where various otherworldly beings live. The most famous scenes of the show take place inside the Red Room of the Black Lodge. There's a one-armed guy named Mike who maybe knows something about Laura's murder, and he warns Agent Cooper about a pure evil man named Bob. There's this giant guy who appears to Cooper a few times. The owls are apparently spies of some kind. There's that lady who carries a log around that apparently sees the future. It's the log that sees the future, not the lady. Agent Cooper has a few prophetic dreams. People keep talking about creamed corn for some reason, and a horse. I'm not even going to try to summarize the plot of the show in any sort of detail. That is way beyond me. But yeah, all these mysteries interact with each other at various points, and it's all right there for the audience to see if not understand. Twin Peaks is not long enough to develop all these mysteries, but there's a specific reason as to why. And that brings me to the most tragic part of this show's history. See, when Twin Peaks first came out, it was groundbreaking. People were fascinated by all the complex plotlines and unexplained events. But when the show's second season rolled around, viewers started getting impatient, and studio executives got antsy. And and they pushed hard for Frost and Lynch to wrap up Laura Palmer's murder case. So, in Season 2, Episode 7, we find out that Laura was killed by her father, Leland Palmer, who was possessed by Bob. This was the biggest mistake that the show could possibly make. Laura was the core of the story. Revealing this information, if I could be dramatic for a moment, was like reaching into the show's chest and ripping out its still beating heart. David Lynch was so disgusted by all of this that he left the show. Afterwards, there was a dramatic drop in quality. Without Laura's murder to guide the story, and without David Lynch's writing, the story meanders around with no idea what to do with itself. And in 1991, Twin Peaks was cancelled after only its second season. The people hoping for answers to the show's mysteries would never get them. Not that there was ever much hope to begin with. When I wrote Rule Number 7, it was mostly Twin Peaks that inspired it. I have no idea what most of these things are supposed to mean. Are they even really there in the story world? Are they meant to be symbolic? It's not clear, not even close to clear. But these things were never meant to be understood. They're meant to be weird and to make you wonder. But they're not traditional mysteries with concrete solutions. Attempting to decipher it all will only drive you crazy.
Brilliant! I have absolutely no idea what's going on.
Trope time. Is there a secret organization pulling all the strings? Not really, but there is. 1. The Bookhouse Boys, a small secret club dedicated to piecing together the town's mysteries. And 2. Agent Cooper's boss, Gordon Cole, and his Blue Rose cases, a collection of supernatural happenings around the country that only a few select FBI agents know about. But both of these are on the mystery-solving end of things, not the mystery-making. There are a few flashbacks, but no time travel, as far as I can tell. But then again, it's hard to know for sure whether the stuff on the screen follows a linear timeline, or any timeline. Literal mystery box? There's this big glass thing that shows up and is never explained. And the guy who knows everything we want to know but won't tell us, that's Mike, easy. He explains a few broad details about Bob, but after that, he keeps his mouth shut. And to a lesser extent, the log lady does the same thing. Twin Peaks Season 2 ended with Agent Cooper getting trapped in the Black Lodge, and an evil doppelganger called a Tulpa taking his place. A pretty dramatic cliffhanger, and fans of the show were devastated that it would never be resolved. Then, Frost and Lynch announced a Twin Peaks movie, called Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me. But this movie was a huge bomb. Firstly, because instead of continuing Agent Cooper's story, it was mostly a prequel that followed Laura Palmer in the days before her murder. And secondly, just in general, all it did was raise a bunch of new questions without answering any of the old ones. The movie's poor reviews basically killed any chance of a Twin Peaks revival. So that was the end. For a while. Twin Peaks fell into obscurity. But as time went on, it became a cult hit, rediscovered by a younger generation who grew up in the era of streaming and complex TV storytelling. And then, it happened. 25 years later, Twin Peaks came back.
I'll see you again in 25 years.
I don't know if they planned that bit, I'm not sure how they could have, but either way, it's awesome. So in 2017, a Twin Peaks revival series came out on Showtime, called Twin Peaks: The Return. This was fantastic, because this was a chance for the show's original creators to come back and tie up all the loose ends they left. Right? Right? No. Twin Peaks: The Return doesn't answer anything. We pick up with the evil Tulpa version of Cooper driving around and getting into mischief. And the real Cooper does get out of the Black Lodge, but something happens to him in the process. And he spends almost the whole show wandering around in an addled state under the name Dougie Jones. Most plotlines from Season 2 are never revisited, and The Return spends its runtime throwing totally new, unexplained stuff at the audience. It's even weirder and more incomprehensible than the original series. Probably because it's on streaming instead of cable, and Frost and Lynch had way more creative control than they did before. And it ends with a total non sequitur that wraps up absolutely nothing. I'll talk about what that all means in a minute, but last point, how are the characters in this show? Twin Peaks has some fun and memorable faces, I'll give it that. But the thing is, I'd make the argument that the characters themselves aren't all that important to the show as a whole. Usually in this segment, I make a quick and simple judgment as to whether the characters are good or bad. But I like to get a little more specific about what makes good characters in a mystery box show. I really think that the mysterious things in the story have to connect to the characters emotionally. If that doesn't happen, then you have a divide in the narrative where you have your character moments and your mystery moments. And if you care more about the mystery, which is usually the case, you'll get bored with the characters thinking, come on, hurry up and get back to the mystery already. A story can't get its audience invested in the characters in a setup like that. And that's exactly the problem that Twin Peaks has. All of the weird supernatural stuff is only tangentially related to the people in the story. Plus, it's super telling that the return doesn't even take place in Twin Peaks, and with the exception of Cooper, most of the old characters only make a cameo or two. Twin Peaks isn't really about the people of Twin Peaks. The draw is in the unique brand of weird psychedelic imagery and unanswered questions. After having gone over all that, at this point you might think that I don't like Twin Peaks very much. But that's not the case. I do like it. But my comments come across as negative because I'm looking at it through the lens of a mystery box story. This show directly inspired almost every modern mystery box TV show there is. Lost, Stranger Things, Gravity Falls. They all owe their existence to Twin Peaks. But treating Twin Peaks as a puzzle box is maybe the worst way to watch it. In hindsight, it's really obvious that most of the mysterious things in the show were never meant to have answers. I mean, Frost and Lynch had two different chances to tie up loose ends, with the movie and the return, and they very deliberately chose not to both times.
Why will elaborate on that?
No, I won't.
Twin Peaks isn't meant to be solved. It's meant to be experienced and interpreted in all kinds of different ways. Don't fight to categorize the weirdness. Let it wash over you. But if you can't let go of all the mysteries, I highly recommend this video by the YouTube channel Twin Perfect. It's a 4-hour investigation of all the mysteries of the show, and it comes to some really satisfying conclusions that I really like. It's in the card and linked in the description if you want to check it out. Before I wrap up, here are some of my favorite moments from the show. All the dumb things that Lucy says.
I'm going to transfer to the phone on the table by the red chair. The red chair against the wall. The little table with the lamp on it. The black phone, not the brown phone.
The episode before you find out Leland was the killer, and his hair turns white and he runs around babbling incoherently.
Now if the words sound queer and funny to your ear, a little bit jumbled and jivey, say mares eat oats and does eat oats and little lambs eat ivy.
And in the return, where Cooper as Dougie Jones uses magic to clean out a casino.
Hello?
So, Twin Peaks was a pioneer. It was new, innovative, and shook up the entire TV landscape. It invented this mystery box way of approaching TV that's so popular today. But it did so unintentionally. It's not a good mystery box story, because it was never trying to be. Twin Peaks is something truly unique, and there has never been anything like it before or since. Twin Peaks gets a final mystery box rating of 4 out of 10.
It's not about the bunny. Is it about the bunny?